After a busy big tech earnings week, Wall Street is reassessing its sentiment on tech titans such as Apple. Shares of the iPhone maker sliding as it warns of a $900 million tariff headwind this quarter. Our next guest, though, says this is still a top tech pick for 2025. It is Dan Ives, Wedbush Managing Director and Senior Equity Analyst. And Dan, it's great to see you. And there's a lot to dig through in terms of big tech earnings. But let's start with Apple here. I believe you raised your price target. We see the stock pulling back a little bit today. And just like everything else, a lot of uncertainty here, an environment where Tim Cook doesn't feel comfortable really projecting very far out what is going to end up happening.
Yeah, and Julie, me and you have talked about it a lot. Like, I actually think Apple should be up today. Because when you look at the India pivot, I think this is Hall of Fame. I think the history of Apple, this could be one of Cook's biggest accomplishments, given what we're seeing in terms of the tariff tornado. And in terms of the $900 million, if you told me April 2nd, $900 million would be the incremental cost, that would be like a gift. I mean, my thought was potentially $2 billion. So I get it, just in terms of the reaction. But to me, like a week from now, I think the stock's higher than it was before they printed last night.
How much of this, Dan, do you think comes down to the uncertainty of Apple executives on that call saying, listen, we can't tell you what that tariff impact is going to be past the June quarter?
And look, Josh, you know Apple as well as anyone, right, over the decades. Like, there's just no way Cook is going to give anything outside June because, first off, they don't know the rules of the game. It all comes down to China negotiations. They're pivoting as quickly as they can to India. But I continue to think, like, they're pivoting to India, and India is probably going to be one of the first trade deals done. And I think it would be, very, very surprising, and I think probably, not the smartest thing, if they gave any guidance past June. Because I think that the fact that they gave guidance at all, I think is a huge positive.
Dan, what do you think iPhone growth looks like, let's call it, over the next 4 quarters? Because there are some analysts, Dan, who think it's going to remain relatively muted until that personalized AI, that updated Siri comes to iPhone.
I disagree on that, just because my view is, like, look at the China number. I mean, you go back to last quarter, down 11%. Constant currency was flat. Like, the irony is, like, China is actually, you're now getting to a point that you used to have a year-over-year increase in China. So I think when you look at steady state growth, it's going to be, call it, mid to high single digits as we go into, let's say, the next 3-4 quarters, but eventually double digits. Now, clearly, AI is going to play a huge role there, but it goes back to, like, services, despite whatever, a slight miss. I mean, that is Rock of Gibraltar like. Look at the free cash flow. And I think you put it together. I mean, there's a stock that's closer to 300 than 200 over the next year.
Dan, we've been talking about margins and tariffs. What about demand, right? Because we know that consumer sentiment is certainly not great right now in the U.S. So what do you think U.S. sales are going to continue to look like?
Yeah, and that's part of from a tariff perspective. I mean, Apple gets it on both sides from the supply chain perspective, but then of course consumer confidence goes down. $1,000 iPhones, obviously those are going to be tougher and tougher, in terms of the price points. Look, I think it comes down to when you look at the install base and you look at how many have an upgrade in, call it 4 years, you're still close to what, 275, 300 million? So if you take more negative view, you're going to be looking at 235, 240 million iPhones sold and I think get 250 million as we go into next year. When I put that together, I mean, relative to the numbers that we're seeing today, I think now Street's cut numbers and it's set up outside of tariffs for actually this probably starts to be a bottoming process in terms of growth.
Dan, broadening it out, which is the big tech earnings report this season that impressed you the most? Was it Apple or another name?
Microsoft. I mean, that was a shocker.
How come?
That was a Saquon-like quarter, right? I mean, the point is, when you look at what you saw in Azure, 200-bit beat, accelerated over the coming quarters. The abandoned data center story the Pinocchio story, that's done. So the point is, like, that was for Nadella. That was, I think, just a pivotal moment to show what's happening at Microsoft, what demand looks like. Look at that guide. I mean, I think this is a stock that's actually going to get stronger and stronger. And look, in software, that continues to be a safety blanket trade in this storm.
Switching gears, we want to get through a lot with you because we know you cover a lot. So I want to ask you about Tesla because you know, of course, we're saying that Musk needed to recommit to Tesla. He seemingly did so, right? Although still 1 to 2 days a week in DC is not nothing. Then comes the report that the board had been exploring, searching for a replacement for him potentially. The board said, no, that's not the case. What do you make of all of this sort of back and forth? It feels a little messy, Dan.
Yeah, of course it's messy. I mean, and again, is smoke, how much is fire? Look, Musk has spent the 1-2 days in DC with DOGE, the same chances that I'm playing for the Knicks in the playoffs. Like, I mean, his days at DOGE are essentially done in the Trump White House. So that's my view. And it comes down to, like, however the board did it, shareholders, part of why we were so adamant and so loud is because the brand damage hit the point where the clock struck midnight. He had to choose. He did a phenomenal job on the call, and I think that was probably one of the best conference calls that he's done, choosing Tesla. He continues to be the biggest asset for Tesla as CEO, autonomous, optimist future. But when you get into, like, board, what happened, the reality is, like, look, there was massive pressure. And I think Musk felt it. And I also think, look, DOGE took on a life its own. I don't think he ever expected the consequences from a brand perspective and what this was going to become around the globe.
Do you think that there's been a lot of criticism of the board, that they had not done their due diligence in the past, that they had not sort of overseen him enough, that they were all too close to him? Does this kind of report show that they're at least making an attempt at
it
trying
shows,
to,
like, not asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
Or exactly, like, Julie, you're exactly right. Like, I think that's always been the knock on the board, like rubber stamp board. Like, you know, Musk basically rules it. It doesn't matter. Now, regardless of, like, what's true, what's not, look, I think the reality is, like, the board had their back against the wall. They had to make, I think, decisions, and there was pressure. And I think Musk felt the pressure too. And that's why that was a much different Musk on that conference call than I've probably ever heard in terms of the beginning. And I think he read the room, and the future of Tesla should not be taken down because of DOGE. And I think that's the reality. And I think he chose the right path.
Dan, another name you know very well, scheduled to report on Monday. That would be Palantir. Still a buy, Dan?
Messy of AI, right? I mean, look, Josh, this is one, like, I think it's going to be $1 trillion market cap in the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, they could just continue. The haters hate on this one. They continue to doubt it. Talk to any CIO, any product manager out there, and ask about Palantir. I mean, their solution set and algorithm is unmatched. And when it comes to all the Brahmas movement, the AI revolution, CapEx, that is all going into their sweet spot. And that's why they're the Messi of AI.
Dan, always great to see you, buddy. Have a terrific weekend.
Great to see you.